Many people no longer trust journalism all over the world. Public dialogue and opinion in African nations are affected by disinformation. Why? And what are the consequences? As a journalist, you have a code of ethics. You are committed to the truth. But telling the truth isn't that simple. Some people don't want it to be told. Some media openly distort the truth. As disinformation floods societies, the truth struggles to be heard. How are journalists amplifying truth and rebuilding trust? Our experts provide practical insights and share their strategies. From fake to faith, regaining trust in journalism in Africa.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll be sharing strategies from three different contexts, three different speakers. We have one common denominator, that's the fact that they all started out as journalists. From Ghana, we have Suleiman Brahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, who's participating via video. We have Pamela Makotsi from Kenya, and we have Hamadou Tidiansi from Senegal. And we will be sharing what they've been doing that's been working on the continent, regaining trust over the last few years in the context where press freedom has been very challenging. So we start with Suleimana, who's joining us virtually. Suleimana, could you please tell us a bit about your initiative and what's the best strategy that you have deployed?
From 2021, when we started bringing together about 10 journalists, led by a very well-known, experienced investigative journalist in Ghana, Manasseh, and resourcing them to do these kinds of stories. So initially people were wondering, what you started this project and for 3 months on, no story has been published. But because of the idea behind the project, it was understandable. And eventually, when the stories started rolling out, people could understand why there was a delay. People could feel the difference. People could feel the impact that we were making with the individual stories that were published. And I think it is the difference in terms of what is happening and what people know over the last few years and what we are doing that is keeping us sustainable in terms of sticking to the facts, doing in-depth investigations, analyzing the issues, and focusing on issues that are of public interest. And I think that is what keeps us going, and that is what makes us different.
Just for the benefit of members of our audience who don't exactly know what you have been doing, could you elaborate?
Well, so as I said, the Fourth Estate is an independent news outlet being hosted at the Media Foundation for West Africa. And the Media Foundation for West Africa is a regional organization working across the 16 countries in West Africa, focusing on promoting press freedom, freedom of expression, digital rights, and independent journalism. And so partly this was a project for us to show as an example of what good journalism can be. And so far, we've been focusing mainly on stories in Ghana. A lot of our stories have either won awards or driven policy shifts, have gotten governments to cancel contracts. In fact, the most recent one was a story that compelled the president of the republic to cancel a contract that was about $100 million. And the investigations established that this was basically a phony contract established between the Ghana Revenue Authority and a private agency, basically to siphon money from the state. And so eventually the president had to cancel this contract. We've had stories that has compelled the Parliament of Ghana to question ministers about expenditure. We've had ministers canceling certain contracts after exposure. We've had, the Minerals Commission, which oversees mining in Ghana, having to revise certain policies after stories were done relating to, mining and how forest reserves and other, ecosystems were being destroyed. And so, as I did say, I think this is a great way of approaching things, particularly in this era where there is so much mistrust for journalism and so much mistrust for stories that are done. And so once you can have your stories getting governments to act, getting policies to be shaped in different ways, getting people to even be willing to contribute to the cost of producing stories, I think that you would end up being sustainable. And in 2024, August, for example, the project won the World Justice Challenge, the information and media category of the World Justice Challenge, which was hosted in Chicago in US. And this was after over 400 entries from around the world. So it's quite an enterprising project, and we look forward to actually achieving more results as we go along.
Tidiane, does this resonate with you in your context? What have you been up to doing in Senegal?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I on now? Okay, good afternoon, everybody. The story is about West Af News, which is a regional media platform. I think we're going to be 2 decades old in 2 or 3 years. It was started in 2006, 2007. What I think we managed to do at West Af is being consistent. When I started it long ago, at the beginning, it was a one-man show. I was still working as a freelancer and started this platform because there were a lot of news. Those days, I used to be working for the BBC and other international media houses. There were a lot of news that was relevant to our region that was not considered international news because it did not speak to a wider audience, to a Western audience. So that's how it started. So we managed to find a little niche in there, trying to speak to the West African audience. And one of the things from the beginning was we're not running for because it was online, and those days people were there was a copy and paste culture. And it still continues, the copy and paste culture online. And the other culture online is clickbaits. I think that's how you call them in English. Just trying to have stories every minute so that you have more visitors, you have a wide audience, and you can make money. I think we decided at the very beginning to get away from that model and say what we want to do is real journalism. And up to now, that's what we're doing. We don't have a story every minute. We don't have 2 stories per day. But when people in Senegal want a reliable story, they would try to find our story. If we manage to do a story on a specific issue, that one is trusted. So I think we try to establish this trust between our readers and what we produce. Our content has a specificity, it's reliable. That at least everyone agrees. The other thing is to say, okay, we cannot speak to everyone, we cannot cover every single story, so we found a niche focusing on in-depth stories. So our audience are those people who are interested in in-depth stories, investigations, long formats most of the time. We do a lot of little things, but really the core of our work is in-depth investigations. I mean, we've been part of major global projects such as the Panama Papers, Swiss Leaks, Fatal Extraction. These are, for those who are following the global investigation projects, these are global investigation projects that we've been part in. And as maybe Suleimana was saying, while we were building, actually the first recognition of the quality of what we were doing was, I think, 2 years after the platform was created, there was some regional awards starting to come. Myself, an apology to have to say that, but anyway, I think it's part of the conversation. I was recognized as a social innovator in a field of news and knowledge by a foundation called Ashoka. At the time, they were associated with the Knight Foundation that the journalism fraternity knows. So these are the things that we're trying to do things differently, not just following the trends and, I mean, what's the story that is trending today and just trying to, okay, I have to write 2 lines about it. Because if you go in the Senegalese context, most of the stories, what's trending, and everybody has a couple of lines. No context, no in-depth, no verification. Long before people started talking about fake news and fact-checking, we've been very demanding to our reporters, those who collaborate with us, to fact-check their stories. Everything on West Africa is fact-checked. If you know the Senegalese context, where every day you have a lot of information going out there without rumors even being printed as news, and you see the West Africa model, that's when you can really appreciate the difference. Where everyone posts or publishes everything and we say, no, it's not been checked, or no, it's not really relevant. It's not because it's in the news that it's relevant. So I think this consistency has opened us doors, has allowed us to build strong partnerships within the region, abroad, has allowed us to be recognized also, the work that we're doing being recognized abroad.
Yes, Pamela, Tidiane says he chose his niche, stayed with it, stayed consistent. What did you do as news leader?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, Ama, just going back to the clip that you played at the beginning of this session and the fact that it is difficult for media to be trusted, or that the media must work extra hard to be trusted. I think I'll base my discussion here on what we did at Nation Media Group, where I worked as group managing editor until last year, to just see what do the mainstream media do in the face of so much doubt in media and in the face of so much false information on the internet. So what we did at Nation Media Group, realizing that the only way for a legacy media house to survive is credibility and relevance. We asked ourselves, what do we need to do? And we decided that we will build trust from our audiences using three strategies. So we focused on our content, we focused on engagement with the audiences, and we also focused on our brand. When it came to the content, the group has a very strong editorial policy that outlines what can be done and what cannot be done. And the pillars for that policy are accuracy, independence, transparency, support for democracy, and support for the environment. Those are the key pillars. So ensuring that in terms of content, that everything that is published is verified, it is fact-checked, and even when a story is breaking, that people will not believe what has happened until they go to the Nation site and check with the Nation. So if it's not been published by Nation, it is not true. That is about credibility. And also independence, ensuring that you're not influenced by advertisers, you're not influenced by politicians, and you stand firm and you report independently. And then the other thing is it in public interest? So also the policy is very clear about publishing information that is in public interest. And in terms of focusing on our audiences, we were very clear about how we engage with our audiences, having a strong feedback mechanism and a platform where we get feedback from our audiences. So besides the usual metrics that other newsrooms will measure of clicks and how long people stay on pages and all that, we have a very clear way of engaging with our audiences where they can write in, they can say what they're unhappy about, and giving that feedback to the journalists and discussing very honestly with the journalists what the feedback means and acting on the feedback. And as part of that, there's also a position of public editor that is a well-respected journalist who is appointed by the board and therefore independent from the newsroom, who acts as the go-between the journalists and the public and the audiences, taking feedback, inquiring into that feedback and reporting back to the public through the various platforms that the organization provides. In terms of our brand, Nation Media Group was established in 1959. It's a strong brand that has survived the test of time. It was established at a time when the Africans did not have any voice during the fight for independence because the other publications that existed were all run by the colonialists, and therefore it's always been seen as a public-facing media house. It is a trusted brand, and we have no choice, or we had no choice, but to build on that trust by ensuring that we keep publishing what is true, what can be confirmed, and what is what people identify with. So I'll speak some more about the kind of content that we decided to publish, but that is how we focused our engagement with our audiences. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, could you tell us some of the feedback that you collected from the audiences?
I think feedback from audiences varies. It can be about a story and somebody will write back and say, you got your facts wrong. So again, as part of the editorial policy, we have a corrections policy that says that any story that requires a correction should be corrected. So we acknowledge when we make mistakes and we correct. Where necessary, we apologize, of course, in consultation with the legal team. But I'll just give you some feedback that we received when we changed our content strategy to start looking beyond the stories of things that were just happening. So moving away from reporting to investigative stories to very public-facing stories. We had a campaign that we called the Broken System, and this campaign focused on just public service delivery in the country, Kenya, where I come from. And we covered issues that were close to the citizens' hearts, things that citizens were struggling with. For example, we had a special report on just how difficult it was for pensioners to receive their pension payment. And we had real life interviews of people who'd been going to the pensions office for more than 5 years without getting their pension. And we had investigations about the corruption that was happening behind the scenes, how much money people had to pay. And when we started publishing these stories, there was, of course, outcry from government. As a matter of fact, at some point, we were ordered to stop the campaign, but it did not stop us from continuing to focus on the issues. So what we dropped was just the name of the campaign. But we also received very strong feedback from the citizens, from the Kenyans who wanted us to publish more, and they would tell us, okay, now you've talked about pensions, talk about what it takes to even get to identify a body in the mortuary, simple things like that that should be straightforward, that were very complicated for citizens. So you start having this interaction with your audiences where they want you to serve them based on their needs and based on information that is going to help them to make their lives better.
Sulemana, what's the feedback that you have received from the audience of the Fourth Estate?
Well, it's been really great, and that's also because of the results so far and how the stories that we are doing really promote transparency, accountability, and good governance, which are the things that undermine people's ability to access public goods and services. And so, for example, one of the stories that we did analyzing which government officials had declared their assets and which ones haven't declared as required by law. After the story was done, immediately we had about 294 government appointees running to declare their assets as required by law. And these included Supreme Court justices, High Court justices, the leadership of Parliament, particularly the majority side or the governing side. I remember at that time the deputy majority leader, who is now the minority leader, calling the editor on the phone and ranting that he thought that he had done it. And when it was challenged that he hadn't done it, he actually called the justice minister on the line, put him on the line to say that, oh, he had declared previously, but we are saying he hadn't done it. And it took the justice minister to say, yes, that was for the previous term. Once you were back in Parliament, you needed to have done it again. And apart from that, as I mentioned, contracts cancelled. Just at the end of last year, we did a story about how our one public institution, which is in charge of managing youth service or national service, had padded their payroll with ghost names. And this is thousands and thousands of people who, some of them in their 90s, in their 80s, and were in their database as persons who are doing youth service. And this is service that is supposed to be rendered for a year by persons who have just completed universities and earned their degrees. And when we did the story, eventually it revealed that this institution was basically siphoning millions every month. And the new government immediately instituted a probe into it, and they also confirmed that for the first month of this year, they discovered a discrepancy of over 80,000 names. In other words, 80,000 ghost names who were to be paid for the month for doing no job. And so on the basis of these things that we do, people are appreciating the work that is being done. People are feeling the real power of journalism, and why I believe our constitution and many constitutions would grant freedom to the press. Because, and I always say that when the Constitution says the media shall be free, there shall be press freedom, it is not for nothing. It is in recognition of what journalists can do and what the media can do to contribute towards development through, driving accountability, shining a light on the dark spots, and that is exactly what we are doing. We've had many occasions where individuals will reach out to say, in what ways can we contribute to the project? And sometimes persons willingly donating money to support the work that we are doing. And I think it's been good so far. There have been challenges such as the multiple slap suits that we receive, which will take a toll on us in terms of going to court here and there. But in the end, people really, really appreciate the work that is being done. And that for us encourages us that people still are looking for the true meaning of journalism, and people are still looking for good journalism being done.
Back to you, Tidiane. You have a slightly different context, being that you are in French-speaking Africa, where news almost is one source. And you have built Westaff, And now you are in the midst of international broadcasters who have bureaus in Senegal. How do you separate yourself from these well-funded media?
Well, first of all, those media houses, the Western media based in Senegal, it's true that you have a lot of bureaus, AFP, BBC, the New York Times, all of them have big bureaus, but I believe the audiences are not the same. And the approach, the perspective is not the same. Who do they speak to? Who do we speak to? What perspective do we give to the news and what perspective do they give to their stories? I think there's a clear difference. One of the things that make our strengths, I always say, to our reporters, that we need to hear more African voices, including in global issues, because usually it does not happen. In global issues, it's very rare on global issues to hear African voices. That's something very specific to West Africa, where we try and favor African voices to be heard, and also where we try and address certain stories that are not really addressed, because there's a whole debate, I'm sure those among us are from Africa know about the Western narrative when it comes to Africa. I mean, there's a whole lot of talk about it, and the need to reshape that narrative. We've been part of that conversation about the need to reshape the African narrative. It's not that everything in Africa is wrong. It's not everybody in Africa is corrupt. But I mean, read the global Western media, and you would have the impression that nothing works in Africa, that every single thing needs to be fixed, that there's no success story in Africa, which is not the case. So we definitely take our own perspective, we're not saying, okay, everything is fine, everything is perfect, everything is beautiful, but we try to have a more nuanced approach to stories, and we also try and give more voices to the Africans on certain global issues. I think that helps us manage. Of course, they have more resources. They have tremendously more resources than West Africa, but we managed to exist because of those choices we made.
We'll take some questions in a moment, but before that, we need to address the elephant in the room. We have a funding crisis with the shutdown of USAID, the gutting of the USAGM. You, Sulemana, Tidiane, you have projects that are based on donor funding. How do you move forward and sustain the impact that you have achieved, the results that you have in this crisis? Tidiane?
Well, I think, as everyone else, we're heading towards an era of uncertainty if you rely on those fundings. But at the same time, I think there has been a global movement to try and say what can be done. But regardless of, what's happening in the US now, I think that uncertainty is always there if you rely on funding. It can be any other. I think there are some other projects coming from other donors or philanthropies or other organizations, and for one reason or the other, they can wake up and say, okay, we're not interested in Senegal anymore, we're not interested in what you're doing anymore. I think that, so for us now, the conversation internally is how do we become self-sustainable? But it is extremely difficult, to tell the truth, to produce high-quality journalism is expensive. It's expensive. One story cannot fund its cost. So I think that's really the challenge. We're trying to be innovative. For the past 2 years, I think, at West Africa, we've been trying to see how to restructure, how to find an income generating model and not rely 100% on donor funding. These are conversations that are going, but to tell the truth, it's a difficult question. I don't think I have the answer. We are trying to find answers, both at an individual level, but also collectively with other media organizations.
Sulemana, would you have an answer or a response to this?
Well, I would say that it's not easy. And I think that is the good thing about it. The fact that it's not easy for me is the good thing about it, because if it were easy, everyone else would be doing it. We have situations where we see people mobilizing to build a classroom for students or for pupils. We see people mobilizing to build a hospital or a clinic. During COVID, for example, Ama, you live in Ghana. You know that individuals came together to build a center, a facility, and later it turned out that if government were to build that, it would have cost the nation about 10 times the cost that was used to build that. We have cases or instances where people will mobilize resources to support the medical treatment of individuals. I think they do so because they feel this is a good thing to be done. And once we have been able to establish ourselves as something that is of public good, I believe we would be able to mobilize. It will be little by little, but I don't think that we would throw our hands up in the air and say, well, US has pulled out or the EU has pulled out and therefore we are folding up. I think when it comes to that point, individuals will show that this is something that we support, this is something that we are for, and we would be able to raise the necessary resources. As I said, even voluntarily, there are individuals who reach out to say, in what ways can we support the work that you are doing? You know, we have lawyers who would say, can we contribute, you know, maybe rebated rates or pro bono for your cases that you have in court? So I think people appreciate what is good. And if it comes to individual supporting, you may not get your $100,000 from an individual as you may get from a private foundation, but you may get 100 people or 200 people willing to give $5 each or $2 each. And for me, that is the way to go. Once you have the trust of the people, you should be able to get people who are willing to keep you going.
Yes, we have some people here who may have questions. Please put your hand up and the microphone would come to you. I see a gentleman up here.
Which gentleman was it? Was it you?
Thanks for that. Really impressive what you guys are doing. I was wondering how you measure trust. If you say trust is growing, what's the proxy for measuring that? Is it audience growth? Is it what Suleimana has just said, are people willing to pay for your content? And if it's audience growth, how do you measure that? Is it page views? What are the metrics that you use to say that people trust us more?
Suleimana?
Well, I think trust is really important. And for us, it's really about the debates that happen after stories have been published. As I mentioned, we've had a story leading to the cancellation of a multi-million-dollar contract. We've had a story that has led to about close to 300 government officials being compelled to declare their assets. We've had a story that has led to the arrest and prosecution of certain individuals. We've had stories that have led to the Parliament of Ghana summoning ministers and questioning them. During COVID, we did a story that led to the closure of the clinic at the seat of the presidency because we were able to, establish that some fake COVID-19 certificates were being issued to travelers from that particular facility. And throughout that, if there was no trust, why would the president act on the basis of our story? Why would people rush to declare their assets on the basis of our story? Why would the state prosecutors act on the basis of our story? Why would Parliament act on the basis of our story? That's one. The extent to which governments or the state authorities would act on the basis of your story. The second point is that the persons who got their contracts cancelled wouldn't just simply throw up their arms in the air and say, oh, okay, we are okay. They will fight you. But the public would even defend you. The public would say, no, but these are the facts, and all of that. You come to the point where people say, well, if it is the fourth estate, then it must be true. And that would also reflect in your audience growth, in the number of people who are sharing your stories, in the number of people who are commenting on your stories, in the number of people who are coming to defend your story after people try to say, oh, this is not true, you haven't checked your facts. And so I think in terms of measurement of trust, for us is really quite straightforward. It's in the numbers, it's in the reactions that you get from your audience, it's in the decisions that are being made, it's about the people who are affected by the stories and how they respond and all of that. So for us, it's a bit of a straightforward thing.
Maybe just add a little bit onto that. I think audiences can be misleading. Having an audience that is loyal to you is fine, but more audience, more people coming to you might be misleading, because mind you, the more a story is sensational, the more it is unbelievable, the more it attracts people. I don't know why. All those fake news, and to the point that some people have realized that, okay, I'm going to build a platform based on fake news, and it will bring more money than reliable journalism. So let us be careful about audience and to measure the impact of journalism and to measure the credibility of a media outlet. Just to add on what Suleiman has said, one example, I mean, apart from the feedback, the direct feedback you get from people telling they like what you do, I mean, that can be very subjective. But one example is when we had this crisis in Senegal last year. I hope you followed what was happening in Senegal back then. When the crisis was harsh and the media was polarized, with these media houses supporting this camp and the other media houses supporting the other camp, one organization came to us, said we need more information, reliable information, to come from Senegal, both for the national audience and for the international audience. We need reliable information that is credible. And they came to us. We told them, okay, unfortunately, we cannot reach the whole country because we are online. If you cannot read, you might not reach us. But they said, still, we want to work with you. Make a plan, see how you can do. And we had this discussion whereby they gave us the leadership of a project to generate good, credible, reliable news, non-partisan, nationwide, and for international audiences. I think it's those little things, you take one, you add to the other. I mean, I don't think we wake up, I don't wake up saying I want to measure the level of trust that I have or that people have in my media house. Thank you.
Should you distinguish between trust and impact, or are you saying that it doesn't really matter? What you aim for is impact, then trust is sort of something that comes by the way?
No, what I'm saying is it's not the numbers. And I've got that conversation several times with media development organizations. It's not about the numbers. The most credible media houses are not the one with the biggest numbers. If you go to Senegal, you take the 3-4 leading websites in terms of numbers, statistics. Definitely, they're not the most reliable ones.
Yes, Sandra.
Well, thank you so much to the panel speakers. I think you provided us with very insightful conversations on how the media can, stay credible and, of course, is trustworthy. Now, I want to speak to Pamela because I know we somehow are related when it comes to the media houses we've worked with. Fake news has been around since time immemorial, but it's now operating in new dimensions with the advent of artificial intelligence. My concern is how can media houses now position themselves to remain, truthful and also trustworthy? I'm sure you've seen, for example, an NTV news piece being put out, and they're basically saying it's the same platform saying the same story. So if someone is looking for this information, how are media houses positioning themselves to see that they are seen, trusted, and actually accepted as well?
Thank you for that. For media houses, and sometimes I think the increase in fake news is a blessing in disguise for the well-established and credible media houses. So from NMG, for example, what we know is that we would never put anything that is not fact-checked, that is not truthful on the website or on any of our platforms. And the media houses have to go the extra mile to actually educate their audiences on how to identify false news. For example, tell them that if you want to verify that this is a clip coming out of Nation Media Group, please go to the site and see whether that clip is on the site. And if it's not on that site, then it's not. Plus other ways of telling what is true and what is not. I talked about the role of the public editor, for example, getting more involved with your audiences, getting them to ask you questions, and also having very open channels of communication with your audiences where they can actually be able to reach you, for example, and ask, is this true? Is this flashcard that is going out with this statement by this leader, is it true? Because, like you say, because of AI, the fraudsters can mimic anything. Even before that, we had papers going out with headlines with a masthead of one of the, for example, the Nation newspaper with a masthead and a fake headline, and they get circulated, especially during election time. But it's how fast and how aggressively then the media houses go out with the truth. But fundamentally, it is about those media houses being trusted themselves. So if you're a trusted media house, then people will trust even when you discredit something that is out there that is fake.
Well, just one last question, and I think it will be sent to you, Suleiman. I think what Pamela is saying is that media houses should respond to most of these issues quickly. But again, you're coming in with a different dimension where you're saying you don't have to do what every other media house is doing. You just have to take your time, come up with a full story. But I think we can all agree that most of us, when a story comes out or something has happened, we really want information so quick because we want to make our minds quickly. How do you then navigate the dimensions of, you want ethical stories, but again, you have to take your time, put up a good story and send it out?
Well, I think it comes down to the model. If you are a newsroom that is so much endowed, like you go to the West and you have a newsroom of about 200 journalists or 150 journalists, you are very sure that maybe every day somebody else's story might be ready. But if you are less endowed as we are, with about 10 or 15 journalists, and you want to do your stories and do them so well, then you really don't have to be dictated to by the desires of what people want in terms of the pace at which people would want to read certain things. Remember that there are other news outlets there whose job is basically, president has said this, the minister has said that, this one has said that. No context, no analysis, nothing. So some people would be satisfied with that, but you want to take your time. What does it mean? What does the president mean? Last year, did he say the same thing? What did the budget last year say versus what is being said now? What is the national policy on this particular issue? What has the minister of the sector minister said versus what the president is saying now? And you do the analysis in such detail that eventually, when something happens, people are waiting for what are these people going to say? Because yes, people want information, but at the end of the day, people also want to be informed properly. People want to learn from whatever is being put together. I think the social media platforms are there to serve that quick pace thing, news being shared. The aggregators are there, pull this, pull that from there and put them together and share. But if your model is to do true journalism, if you have the numbers, I think that you can actually put out a story or two, a critical, great story or two every day or every other day. But if not, I think given what is happening and the need for trustworthy information, it's better you take your time, do an in-depth story. If it is every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks that you're going to come out with a story, that those stories would make an impact and would affect the lives of people in ways that maybe 200 or 300 other content that may have been put out elsewhere wouldn't have.
We take our last question. We are coming to the close of our session. Yes.
Right. Thank you, guys. And it sounds like media literacy programs are a really good way to go about teaching your audiences how to spot fake news, how to be sure that their news, where they're consuming it from, is legit. And I'm wondering whether just internally between maybe just the three of you or all of us in the room, what do you see as the role of collaboration, where perhaps newsrooms like Nation Media, which is more established and has resources, does not just reach out to its audiences, but does a wider audience media literacy program to help reach out to everyone, really, to reach out to illiterate or less literate audiences who might not have access to all of these resources to be able to tell apart fake news and deep fakes. And so I'm just wondering whether you see any potential or room for collaboration where we can then help support local independent newsrooms to also be able to teach their audiences how to tell apart fake news.
Oh, would you like to answer that?
I don't know that I can speak for Nation Group anymore, but I see what you're saying, and I think there's need for, yes, collaboration, but also for other organizations that support media or that work within the media space. We have, for example, editors associations. I know we have the Africa Editors Forum, we have the Kenya Editors Guild and other guilds within the regions, which can come together to undertake some of these tasks. But I agree with you that in this age of a lot of disinformation and misinformation, audience literacy is key, and someone has to do it. And I don't think when, for example, Nation Media Group undertakes that kind of program, it's only educating its audiences. It's educating the entire media, the entire space, the ecosystem, so everybody gets to learn. But we need more players to come on and support the cause.
Yes, I'll take your final thoughts now, starting with you, Suleimana. We have a huge gap to fill. 93 million users, news consumers are missing a news source. Consumers of VOA news content in over 60 languages now. How can we bridge this gap? It's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. What can we do at the moment?
Well, I mean, as you've said, it's a crisis, but I see it as representing also a great opportunity because a significant vacuum is created. And given the resource constraints by individual news outlets, I think this is the time for a lot of regional collaborations. I don't see why it may not be possible for a news outlet in Nigeria to collaborate with one in Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, to be able to cover these countries much more effectively and professionally. And so for me, it's a great opportunity that has been created, and it will take a lot more collaboration to be able to fill the gap. And it's something that I believe would be done.
Tidiane, do you have any thoughts?
Well, in terms of collaboration, I think Westaf, we've always been having collaborations with other media houses. And just to add on to that person, I mean, the lady talking about collaboration towards media literacy, I mean, for the past few months, or is it about a year, we have had this collaboration with a citizen group whereby we have conversations, online conversations on space, X space. Twice per month we have conversations going specifically talking about disinformation. Like next Sunday, we have one of those conversations going on. So, but we should understand that as journalists, that's not really our job. Yes, media literacy is fine. Probably there are groups that are more dedicated to it and that have to focus on it. If we can do something through our information channels, yes, of course, we will do. And one last thought for you about wanting the information now. What is the added value of coming on air and saying the president has said this, when the president was saying it, it was live on Facebook, it was live on Twitter or X, it was live on, I don't know, Instagram, on YouTube, on every other channel. So I think the journalists will also understand that rather than trying to compete with all these social media platforms, everybody who's doing, I think this thing is being live streamed. So if you are a reporter, you get out of here and saying, okay, Tijan said this at this session, you're not bringing any added value. While if you take your time and write a good piece with context, I think that's probably the way we should think as reporters, as journalists. Where is our added value? What can we bring to the people so that they understand that what we are doing is totally different from a live on Instagram? Thank you.
Pamela, you have the final word.
I think for me, just to speak to the VOA issue and the fact that donor funding, of course, is not something that you can rely on permanently. I'm a strong believer that if you have good content, people are willing to pay for it. And I've seen this demonstrated in various media organizations. So I think we just need to work on our content and make sure that we give audiences content that they find useful enough to pay for the same way they'll pay for a packet of milk. Thank you.
Yeah, put value in the content. Thank you. This has been your panel, Hamadou Tidiane, Pamela Sitoni, Suleimana Brema. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.